Hi, I'm Tom Melton. I have the privilege of working with leaders of organizations, challenge them to look at your own life and look at a path to become better. And if you're interested in getting better, which I think we all are, got a few ideas I want to kind of share with you. One of them is that some of you may have had this experience. You surely know the parable of the emperor and his clothing. It's pretty familiar, where the emperor was naked and no one would tell him, and so he finds that he's walking around all the time and everyone acts like he's clothed. And interestingly, after a while, people actually think he is clothed, and he doesn't know any difference, so he's not very self-aware. And then eventually someone comes up and tells him that he's naked, and typically of a leader who is surprised by this new reality, the messenger gets the axe. And so maybe some of you find yourself in that position as the emperor's clothing. But the interesting thing is that I find in dealing with heads of organizations is that most of us never think, when we hear that parable, that we're the emperor. We're very aware of everybody else. So I talked to one CEO of a company who said, oh yeah, Bob, he's clueless. No, and why is he clueless? Well, because no one ever tells him. Or when they do tell him, he doesn't receive the information. So at the heart of that whole parable is what is commonly called nowadays, from Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, the idea that there is such a thing as emotional intelligence, that how we relate to other people is a huge variable in the way we operate in our organizations and our companies and so on. I want to just give you kind of a core of what we look at around emotional intelligence. There are three basic elements of emotional intelligence that need to be examined. The very first and the foundational is what we would call self-awareness. In other words, am I aware of what I'm feeling, of my emotions? And one of the goals of a healthy emotional intelligence is to be able to know what you're feeling before anybody else knows. Now you think about that, most typically it's the other way around. I'll come home, my wife will say, how's it going today? How'd it go today? And I go, fine. And she said, well, how are you feeling? And I don't, in a sense, need to say any more. I typically say, it's fine, okay? It's fine. And but it isn't fine. And she is knowing what I'm feeling before I am knowing it. So one of the processes in emotional intelligence is spending time to examine, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Where is it coming from? And as we do that, it takes us to the second piece of emotional intelligence, which is being aware of how our presence and our setting affects other people. So you see it in a board meeting, you see it in your office. You come walking into the office in the morning and you've had you about run over some guy in the parking lot, and your wife was mad at you when you left, and you come in and you're just, hi, how you doing? Or you don't even say anything, and it affects everybody. And pretty soon, people, as soon as you walk by, say, well, what's wrong with him? And well, I don't know, we better not say it today. So the question is, you may be aware that of your feelings. I'm going into the office, I'm really uptight, and I'm aware of that. But you don't pay attention to how that impacts other people. And as you become more aware of that, and then you understand how it impacts other people, then you're able to do the third piece, and that is to learn how to regulate your emotional intelligence. And one of the subtexts of that we talk about, that I won't go into in depth now, but it's very integral to this, and that is body language. It's amazing to me how many of the CEOs and leaders of organizations I speak to are really impervious to this whole idea. And I'll ask, do you ever notice other people's body language? If someone's having a board meeting or a staff meeting and they're sitting there with their arms crossed like this, or they're looking at their handheld, whatever it is, there's a language that's being spoken that is typically speaks louder than what the person would say. So you say, Bob, are you interested in this subject? And he may say, yeah. And then if you look at his body language, you'd say, well, you're not interested in this. So a part of that whole progression of first being self-aware, secondly being aware of how you impact other people, and third being able to regulate it, has a huge impact on the way that you lead and the way that you influence. The most dangerous thing is to be suffering from the emperor's clothing syndrome. And how does that happen? Well, a part of regulating and part of being aware of how you're impacting and the ability to regulate it and grow is by bringing other people into it. So if you did just nothing but at your next staff meeting to talk about, I'm learning this, and then ask people, how do you experience me? In this last meeting, what did you see? When I got real big and enthusiastic, help me. So there's a line in Jerry Maguire movie years ago where his agent was Jerry Maguire with Cuba Gooding's character, and he said, help me help you. That as a leader of an organization, that we need to have that kind of understanding with our people that we're leading, is to ask them to help you, to bring them into the emperor's clothing syndrome. If I'm naked, tell me. But when they tell you, if you then fire them, don't be surprised. So all of this is connected, starting with self-awareness, the awareness of how you impact other people and the way that you regulate that. That's just a little bit for you to think about today, and there'll be more coming at you next week.